a government of the youth. I believe strongly that we need to make use of the youth energy that we have in this country. And as you rightly quote the figures, over 70% of our population are below the age of 35. That is a motive force. So the youth can be either a blessing or a curse, depending on the way you make use of them. For now, up to now, the youth have been like a curse, because they have not been given the requisite tools to be able to contribute properly to the society. You know, if you don't give them education and necessary skills, they become a drag on the society. They become drug addicts, they become delinquents, they become criminals. But if they're properly empowered, then they become proper source for wealth creation. And that's why we need to attend properly to this issue of the youth. So we have said, and you saw in the BBI, we said very good things. We said that we not only wanted to create a youth department, but a ministry of youth affairs. And to create also a national youth commission under that ministry, a constitutional commission, if you look at the BBI. And that commission was going to ensure that whatever has been promised in policy documents is actually implemented. When you're talking about 30% of all contracts or jobs from the national government and county government, who is there to ensure that it is being implemented? There must be a mechanism, a constitutional commission that will ensure that each and every county is actually implementing that provision, that all contracts that are being awarded, at least 30% go to companies owned by the youth. And it talks about mentorship for the youth, and like having the youth summits for the youth. Jane should have told you here that when I was a prime minister, I had round table with the business community, and I had also a round table with the youth that were being held quarterly. And it was being held religiously quarterly, so that we can be able to get feedback from the youth. What are the problems that are affecting the youth, and how are we doing? So they don't need to be convinced. It is something that I've already tried before, and therefore it will be part of my policy. Cabinet, at least 4 in the cabinet, I can say it will be more than 4. And then the third point that he made, the fourth point, was corruption. Corruption is actually killing this country. You heard President Uhuru Kenyatta saying that 2 billion shillings is going down the drain on a daily basis in this country. That may be true. But you see, he is helpless to do it. Because to do it, you need to actually revolutionize the government and carry out major reforms. We did it when we came into government with President Kibaki in 2003. When we came to the government, we found a bankrupt economy. The government was under collecting revenue. They are collecting a total of 200 billion shillings on a 500 billion shilling budget. Means that 300 billion shillings, they were depending on the donors, international community. So when the donors closed the taps, Moi had no other reason but to agree to those conditions, to agree to opening up, repealing Section 2A to allow for formation of other political parties. But then, when we went in, we thought seriously about it. And this trick I also later on sold to my friend in Tanzania, the late John Pombe Magufuli. The government is revenue and expenditure. So what did we do? We looked at revenue collection. They're under-collecting. The rates were also very high, and therefore the government did not have sufficient funds. You look around. The customs officers, the Kenya Revenue Authority officers, those who are collecting income tax and so on, and the procurement officers are the boys in town, the ones who are purchasing apartment blocks, the ones who are driving the latest model of cars, they're the ones who are building castles in the rural areas, the ones who are building high-rise buildings in village markets, and so on. So they do a lifestyle audit for these people. When we did lifestyle audit, over 70% of them were encouraged to be corrupt, and they were sent home. So we brought in new officers. There was fresh air. Revenue started rising. From 200 billion, it went to 5. It went to 7, to 9. We reached a trillion. A billion, sorry. Sorry, a trillion for the first time. And everybody was happy. For the first time, we could finance all our development projects without having to borrow from outside. 95% of our development project was funded from domestic resources. We only borrowing 5%. And the economy began to grow. We found zero growth, negative growth. It went to 2%, to 3%, 5%. We reached 7% rate of growth, the highest since in the history of Kenya, under that regime. We were determined to go to double digits and maintain it there for more than 10 years, 10 to 15 years, because we had come up with Vision 2030, which was aimed at pulling this country from a poor third world economy to a middle income status by the year 2030. So we were very clear. Every year we were doing assessment of how we were doing. Today we would have been very far. The issues of COVID and appointment of diplomatic service and so on, that is fine. You can take that for granted, that we can appoint the youth, quite a number of them, as ambassadors to represent the Republic of Kenya. And having youth in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs attending to matters of foreign affairs. Because outside the country, the majority of people you have are youth, students studying in different parts of universities in different parts of the world. So we will have a youth looking after them. That's not a problem. We'll do that. She talks of sanitary towels in all the public places. This is something that you remember in our government with Kibaki. We started with sanitary towels in schools. But then we also said we extend it to all public places, so that members of the female gender do not feel sometimes discriminated and looked down upon. It is something that is necessary in a civilized society. If you go into Europe, you'll find them in toilets, public toilets everywhere, where women are. So why can't we do it here? You don't have to demand. It's a right. Yes, gender-based violence, agree that gender-based violence is so rampant. These days, you wake up in the morning, you open TV, or you read the headline of newspapers of somebody, the couples who have killed each other, and then after that killed themselves. There's just too many. These crimes are rising because of the state of our economy. Even the ones you talked about of the youth with the mental issues and so on, those are in the rise because of frustrations in the society. Stress and pressures in our society is what is causing these things. So don't come about palliative answers, curative measures. You want to have preventive measures. Prevent them by dealing with the issues which are causing them, rather than saying expand Madari or build another mental hospital. No, you want to close them. Two-thirds gender rule. Yeah. I'm myself a convert. I mean, not a convert. I've always believed in it. I've always believed that no society can grow if half of the population are not working and dependent on the other half. And these are a part of the population that is productive. I've lived in Norway, where I was forced by circumstances to flee into exile. And you need to go and look at how Norwegian women are making contribution to development of their country. Why can't we do it here in our country? You're talking about representation. And I've told my people that, look, we must come up with affirmative action to deal with the issue of gender. Why? Not because women are unable, because men will tell you, why can't they just stand up and also go and run as like men? They're able people. Why? But I tell them that there are certain historical factors which work against women. Number one, because of marriage, women are forced to leave their places of birth and go to other places where they were not born. A woman was born in Gatanga, in Muranga, and she goes and gets married in Madioya, up there. And she wants to run there against a man. That man knows here. He grew up there. With this one here, we used to play together as children. This one, we were circumcised together. This one here, we used to have cows or goats together. This one I call my auntie. This one here is my grandmother. This one is my father, my cousin, and so on and so forth. But the woman has left those kind of relations where she was born in Gatanga. Her brothers, her mothers, her fathers, her parents, and so on are all there in Gatanga. So she's come to a strange place. The only person she knows there is her husband and her immediate in-laws. So the field is not level. If you are a man, you came from Madioya and went and ran against her in Gatanga, you'll have problems. She'll beat you. That's why we must come up with affirmative action when it comes to representation, and then the county assembly and the National Assembly. So I don't need to be convinced. That's why we put in the BBI. And I say that if you don't do it here, you do an election 2022, the results are not going to be very different for reasons that I've already mentioned. I believe in this. And this is something we're determined to resolve, irrespective of what the court did with BBI. Disabilities. That was Wanja and Maina. Wanja Maina. I've dealt with Andrew Mbudhia and Solomon Korea. I've always believed in what they say, that disability is not inability. Somebody is disabled through no choice of their own, but they have got mental capacities and they have got ability to make contribution to our society. First, we need to change the attitude of the people that would look down upon people with disabilities and make the environment disability friendly. In terms, for example, when buildings, you must have ways through which people with disability can get into buildings without problems, and so on. Even workplaces, mind the people with disabilities, and then include them in society by giving them responsibilities. Practice affirmative action so that you can mainstream the people with disability in the society. Jennifer Githu, reduce impediments to service. And then you have got these loans, which basically a big load on those who are beneficiaries, like former students and so on. And you have got Credit Reference Bureau on your back all the times, wherever you go. But find a way in which, for example, this burden can be transferred to the employer, or so and so on and so forth, or written off. I think we can find a solution to this problem. The AGPO, access to government procurement opportunities, the 30%. I've already talked about that. Crime and abuse, mental health and drugs, I've already talked about that. Then there was Jane Kimani, and finally Wamboi Nyoto. This issue of post-election violence has been mentioned, it's been casting across, and I'm going to finish with it. The issues of opportunities I've already talked about, and then the issue of inclusion, I've talked about that. She talked about issues of illegal arms, cattle rustling, violence, which actually make life very difficult in our societies. Things like cattle rustling are basically things which are primitive, and you don't need to have those things in civilized society. It is the issues of lack of opportunities, and that is what is causing this violence that you have. And it is something that can be solved when you create more opportunities in our society. People don't just have to depend on pastoralism or cattle rustling. Give them other opportunities for income earning, and you can mainstream them in the economy. And then also have, like in those areas where you've got pastoralism, water and pasture is a major issue. During the droughts, there is no pasture and there's no water. They have to trek very long distances. In the process, some of their livestock die. Then now, because that's their source of livelihood, they have to go and raid other communities in order to be able to get livestock back to, so that they can continue their style of life. But you need, for example, to get water and feedstock for these animals. And you know, in those areas where you have these problems, when it rains heavily and there's flooding. But most of that water then runs away into the ocean, which does not need water. So what you need to do is do water harvesting. Construct big dams and ponds and ponds to harvest water when it is available in abundance. And so that when the drought comes, at least water is available for these animals. And then also find a way of getting feedstock available so that you can be able to supply this feedstock to these people when there is no pasture that time. That is the permanent solution to this issue of cattle rustling in our country. Finally, now let me turn to post-election violence. PEV. And we've had it. Oh yes, my attention has been drawn to, I omitted a very important person here, my long-standing friend, and is also the one who is in charge of diaspora. He's been in charge of diaspora from my ministry, and he's been also our representative in the United States for a very, very long time, Mr. John Maina. John is a very, very important person. You need to know him. And he's done very many things to me as a person. Post-election violence must be avoided at all times. But we need to know, why do we have post-election violence? Post-election violence happened because of how we do our elections. You see, but then there are people who take advantage of how we do our elections to deal with what they consider to be historical issues. But some of them are basically criminals. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, as we were coming from Nyahururu and Nakuru, we flew over, after Naivasha, as you're coming next to Longonot, around Maimahiu. There are camps there, of which are now almost becoming permanent settlement. Two very big ones of victims of post-election violence of 2007. These are people who were relocated. Their farms were taken by other people who are surrounding, who are living around their farms. Were invaded. Some of their relatives were killed. They were forced to flee where they were staying. And they were now brought here and given some open land there as temporary shelter as they are waiting to go back to their residences. This has not happened up to today. And there are big families, there are big communities, we go and look at there. It's a shame on our country that such a thing can be happening. Because we've been unable to come up with a solution to that problem, facing it, because the people who invaded their farms are known. They are staying in those farms. So it's not only enough to say, oh, CISIT may reconcile this community and this community, but we are not taking measures to do restitution so that the people who are chased away are allowed to go and resettle back in their farms. We must face the facts in this country and deal with them. Now, but back to why. When, and this is why, you know, the basis of the handshake. Me and Uhuru, when we met, we had long discussions. First, it was very difficult. Oh, you called me a drunkard? But you also called me Kimundu Muguruki. So after a long time, we had very, very frank and open discussion. At the end of it, we agreed. For the first meeting took 13 hours. The second one took 6 hours. So we're meeting for 19 hours. Then we agreed that we resolve these issues. And we looked at where we came from. We took a journey down the memory lane. Where did we come from? We realized that, you know, this country, which was created by the British after the Berlin Conference, is a divided society. But we go back to the struggle. How did we struggle to become the Republic of Kenya? Not far away here, you've got what they call Hariduku Street. Not many people understand who Hariduku was. Hariduku was a worker in town here and led a demonstration against colonial oppression. Many people were killed there in that spot, around that police station there. A lot of blood was shed there by the colonialists shooting people. Hariduku was arrested and banished and taken to Kismayu. That's where he was imprisoned. That was in 1922-23 there. He's the one who started the actual struggle for independence of our country. After that, many organizations were formed, the Kikuyu Central Association, the Luo Union, and all this and that. And then Jomo came from Europe in 1945 and took over the leadership of KAU, Kenya African Union, and revolutionized it. And that's how now he drafted Kina Jaramogi Oginga Odinga into it. And then the struggle for liberation started, land issue, particularly in Central Province. And in 1952, they were arrested and taken to prison. Then they were there. In 1957, Africans were for the first time elected to Legico. In 1958, Jaramogi said here in the Parliament, Legico then, that, Mr. Speaker, in the heart of hearts of the African people, Jomo Kenyatta and all those who were arrested with him and detained with him were and are the true leaders of our people. And their continued detention offends the consciousness of our people. That was that time. Jeremiah Nyaga would later tell us, when Jaramogi uttered those words, you could hear a pin drop in Parliament. Some Wazungu said, Mau Mau, Mau Mau. They did not believe Jaramogi would sleep in his home. But then he came out. He was opposed by many, there were 14 Africans. Only one of them supported him, Masinde Muliro. The rest opposed him for fear of the colonialism. Kiano said, Julius Gikonyo Kiano, that those people were leaders at that time, but they were not elected by anybody. We are the elected leaders, so we are now the leaders. So Jaramogi challenged him to a meeting now Muranga, and he did not accept. Jaramogi addressed a rally in Kisumu, and they supported him. Here in Nairobi, they issued a statement supporting him. Mombasa, Eldoret. Then they now came the groundswell. Uhuru na Kenyatta. Uhuru na Kenyatta. But then Jaramogi came and told him, it is not Uhuru na Kenyatta, it is Kenyatta na Uhuru. That we release Kenyatta first, then we get Uhuru. Then the governor called Jaramogi to State House and told him that Kenyatta is senile. He's too old, he cannot lead the country. We have got a message from the Whitehall in London that you should agree to become a prime minister and form the government. Jaramogi refused. He said, no, Kenyatta is just around here in Maralal. Release him to come and lead us. The other leaders at that time, because there had been an election, agreed to form a joint government with the colonial government. That's how they became ministers before independence. Go and check in 1961 and who they were. Then now Jaramogi marshal people, and that's when he was singing, Kenyatta alitaka Kenya, Kenyatta alitaka Kenya, Kenyatta alitaka Kenya, akafungwa. Asante, asante Baba, asante, asante Baba, asante, asante Baba, kwa kufungwa. So then now, the country got together. We did not think of us as Kikuyus, Luos, Kambas, Kalenjin, and so on. There was that sense of nationalism. And that is what actually forced the British to give independence. Otherwise, it would have been like Rhodesia or South Africa. That unity. And our families became one. You hear me all the time referring to Uhuru as brother. It is not taken from out of the blues. We are brothers. Uhuru's elder sister Margaret used to live in our house there in Jerusalem. Jaramogi is the one who was looking after the family. So we are brothers. Me and Uhuru, we are brothers. Even if we fight for elections, we just fight. But so we have been brothers. We are brothers, and we've been. So what I'm saying is, the answer to post-election violence, because you see, us we did not do physical violence. Demonstrations are allowed. But that's after the court nullified the elections and ordered a repeat. And because we disagreed with the IBC, we did not participate. And because we believed that we had won the elections, we went to Uhuru Park when they went to Kasarani. And then now we had that stalemate. And we sat together and we resolved it as brothers and agreed that Kenya is bigger than both of us. Therefore, we bring the people of Kenya together. We said, let us go back to where these people started, Jaramogi and Kenyatta, when the people were united against alien rule and brought us together. If we start from here, we can move together, and this country can be united. And that is why I'm going to be talking to you from that position later. I don't want to go there. We agreed that we will ensure that never again will Kenyans fight after an election. We'll ensure that elections are held which are free and fair. And these coming elections of 2022, if Uhuru is the president, I can assure you it will be very free and fair. Because Uhuru is as committed to the handshake as I am committed. We believe strongly that if we bring that spirit that brought independence in this country, here in this country, we can be able to lift this country from where it is to where the founding fathers wanted it to be. And that is my concluding remark will be my concluding remark, starting remark when I'm going to finish. Thank you very much.